Okay, we're live. Now it's real. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you all. I know that there's a lot of places you could be right now, but for whatever reason, you chose to hang out with us, and I do well appreciate it. My name is Josh Long. I work on the Spring team. I'm happy to be with you here today, and we're trying out a thing to stream, and I hate streaming, so this is hopefully going to be better. You know, whatever. It's going to be something. Let's see. Can you see anything I'm doing? We don't know. Nobody knows what's happening or why. I don't even know where to check. I'm assuming we're live.
You're good. I did it for you.
Okay, thank you. Good stuff. So, my friends, what I wanted to talk to you today about was something called Spring Shell. Now, Spring Shell is a technology that was created years ago and that we actually use behind the scenes for a number of different projects, right? So, Spring Shell was, if you've ever used Spring Cloud Data Flow, you know, there's a shell there. If you've ever used, actually a few things that have come out of that group. VMware, I think, uses it for something, OPSI, I forget what at this point. Spring, the actual mechanism in Spring Shell, the engine, a lot of that came out of Spring Roo, if anybody can remember that. That was a thing we did, 15 years ago-ish. And a lot of it was driven through this CLI, right? And so we've got this, believe it or not, for a thing that is really, really good at building web apps and microservices and server-side things, we're also pretty darn good at building shell applications at this point. So Spring Shell has a lot of really cool benefits to it that, I just think they're worth looking at. And I think I've already done, like, for example, I've already done a YouTube, I did a Spring Tips video on Spring Shell a long time ago in a galaxy far away, right? And that video still holds up pretty well. Spring Shell doesn't change all that often. I'm happy or sad to report one way or another. But something big has happened. Something that just changes the game for me, which is you can use it in GraalVM, right? You can use Spring Shell to build native applications. So the only downside to building a Spring Shell-based application hitherto was that when you built the application, you had to deploy the JRE, which is not great. It's nice that you can have a command line application that all platforms can run, but they all need to have the JRE, which is a whole other ask. It's a whole other hill before people can start building things. And I'm sure you've all used command lines. I don't know, for some reason, a lot of organizations have started their CLI development experience with the languages with which they're more familiar, and sometimes those are not particularly great. So, for example, like more than a decade ago, the original Cloud Foundry CLI, right? Cloud Foundry is a platform as a service that we started VMware back in 2000, and we open sourced in VMware in 2011. That original CLI was written in Ruby. Ruby is notoriously finicky, right? Like every other little minor version breaks things, and there's native libraries that need to be compiled. So it was a hot mess, right? And there are other famously large cloud infrastructure companies today that build their CLIs in Python. I love Python. I love it. I love Python, right? But Python is also one of those things where you can't just take the consumer's version of it. For example, if you're on Mac, they might well be using a version, they might by default have version 2.0 of Python, which is now more than a decade since out of date, right? That's like Java 5 or something, not even 8. So yeah, you have to ship your own. It just becomes a whole burden, right? And the same thing kind of applied to Spring Shell. Obviously, Spring Shell has worked successfully across a much larger swath of JVM versions, if only because it just hasn't changed all that much, and we've been developing it and working on something like it or something that's part of it for more than a decade. But nonetheless, VMware Tanzu is live, and Cartographer is okay, I guess that's me. Something. Anyway, we've been working on it for a long time, and it's been well tested across multiple operating systems and so on. But still, I've always wanted to be able to just chuck the JRE. I even looked at using Spring Shell and JLink to maybe create a minimal version of it or something. And there's also but the idea with JLink is that they give you a way to legally bundle the JRE with your code, which is nice because it's really hard to do that. It's surprisingly hard to do that safely, right? If you bundle the JDK, you've got to there's licenses and stuff. I don't quite understand all of it, but trust me, you can't just go take Oracle's JRE and bundle it with your application. You might be able to do that with OpenJDK, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm definitely not a lawyer. Please don't listen to me for anything at all, ever. But nonetheless, you would need to do that, right, to make sure everybody could use it. And I just I just want a CLI. I want like a 50 megabyte binary that works, on Mac. And then if I'm on Linux, I can download the Linux binary. If I'm on Windows, I can download the Windows binary. And if I'm on, Solaris, I guess, I don't know, whatever the other operating system these days is, I could download that binary, right? That's not a big deal. I'd much rather that than having to download JRE for each operating system and then download the jar. Okay, so let's take a look at Spring Shell. If you haven't seen this before, it's really cool. And it's cool even without Spring Native, but Spring Native, the new, not yet GA support for Spring Native, it's money. I cannot wait for you to see this. And surprisingly, a lot of it just kind of worked out of the box. I don't have access to a Windows machine. I suppose I could get one. I work at VMware. We are pretty good at virtualizing things. But I just haven't really tried it. I think it could work. A lot of it just worked on apparently a lot of what I'm going to show you today will just work out of the box. But nonetheless, I've had to use a Spring Native hints class to augment Windows in particular, apparently. But again, I haven't tested it on Windows, so I don't even know, what to expect there. I don't even have the skills to try it out yet. It's a whole other thing. Maybe that's another episode. It's just Josh finishing off the Trinity there. Okay, so we're gonna build a new application. We're gonna call this Shell because I'm imaginative like that. We use Java 17 because it's the future and it's the only right thing to do. I'm gonna use 2.64. That seems legit. I want Lombok, I guess. I mean, maybe. I don't even know if I do. Probably don't. I want to use Java. I want to use Spring Boot. I guess that's it. I just want to use the regular. Yeah, let's just use that. Actually, I'm not even sure. Yeah, we'll just keep Lombok. If we don't use it, thanks to Spring Native, it'll get compiled away, so it's not a big deal either way. Sadly, Spring Shell is no longer on the Spring Initializer, which is kind of a bummer because it used to be here. It's one of those things where I don't think a lot of people are using it. Sadly, we use it. It's used by a lot of people. Like there's a ton of people who are using applications that in turn use Spring Shell, right? So it's definitely out there and usable, but I don't think people know about it and use it all that much directly, which is a bit of a pity because it's really neat. So I'm going to hit generate. Here we go. And go back to my local machine here. All right, good stuff. So first things first, we're going to have to add the definitions, add the Maven dependencies to our build. So we'll wait for this thing to spin up. What was that? Was that like cached files from before? All right, so public static void main. The only thing, okay, so I need all the Maven. Oh, I don't think I added the Spring Native bits, did I? No, I didn't. Oh. Okay, so first of all, 2.7 miles. No, I don't want that either. I want whatever. 264 Spring Native Lombok Explore. Copy and paste all that. Paste. Reload. Okay. With that there, then I need to manually add the dependency for Spring Shell, which is probably the hardest thing we're going to do today, which is to say not hard at all. Let me add some Maven repositories. This is the reason why I use the Spring initializers, to get access to these pre-configured plugin and Maven repositories. So here's Spring releases for both repositories and plugin repositories. I'm going to copy and paste from my iPad. Okay, so there's Spring snapshots, Spring releases, and Spring milestones. So now it'll resolve all the libraries from these various repositories, even if they're not yet in Maven Central. We'll go here. I'm going to create a new dependency. We're going to add a new dependency called Spring Shell Starter JNA, which is the native. So Spring Shell Starter JNA. And the version, Spring Shell, will be 2.10 snapshot. Yeah, there you go. That's good. Okay. And that should be it. I think, no, maybe that's it. We need one more thing. We can already tell. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need Spring AOT, the hints. Okay, we'll add that. Okay. Now, Spring Shell is just that. It's a way to build shell applications, command line applications. Anybody can use. You can use like Pico CLI or something like that to build an application that takes parameters and does validation. This does a lot more than that. This is, you're in a shell and you want to do something interactive. You want to REPL, right? And so Spring Shell gives you a component model for building applications that that do that. So let me open up the code here. Okay, so let's just try, I mean, I guess we just kind of have to see it in action to kind of believe it, right? So simplest thing first, shell component. This is a stereotype annotation, right? And let's just say calculator, okay? So we want to create a calculator, and we're going to create a component that has a shell method, right? Shell method public int add, and it'll be int a, int b, return a plus b, right? Couldn't be simpler. Very, very, very straightforward. Let's just see what that looks like. That's already a shell application, right? So we go to here, go to shell, okay, Maven, skip tests, clean package, and Java minus jar target jar, okay? Oops. Roll. Oh, command description cannot be null. I think that's this bit right here. So add, I think. Neat. Okay, so you can see it's a regular Spring Boot app, but there's a shell down there now, right? And the shell, you know, at a prompt, I can hit tab. You can see it. Okay, what do I want to do? Well, I want to get the stack trace of something that failed. These are built-in shell commands. Nothing has failed, so I don't have to worry about that. I hit tab again. I can use clear. Hit tab to get that. Tab again. I get history, I guess. There you go, right? You can see what I've done so far. These are all the built-in commands, and you can override them. You can actually just throw them out. You can keep them, but they're kind of useful. For example, exit does something useful, right? You want exit, right? So exit's nice. You could rebuild that, surely. I mean, that wouldn't be that hard, but it's nice to have the one that's already there. So Java minus jar, okay. The other thing you can see is that we've got all this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I, more than almost anybody else, love the Spring Boot banner, but now's not the time. You know, now I want it gone. So banner, well, actually, or at least I want like my own custom one. So I'm going to turn that off. What else do I want? I want to turn off the logging. So logging level org, just root equals off, right? So let's try this again. Exit. And try that one more time. I'm going to rebuild and rerun. Let's see what that gives us. Okay. So there you go. See, it finished building the application, and then it started up quietly. There's nothing there. You wouldn't know that. So if I go here, you know, there it is. There's our Spring Shell application, you know, ready to use. And there's no prompt, there's no logging, no nothing. So now, you know, you're just at a prompt. So now what about add? Okay, well, add takes two parameters, 1, 2, right? And that gives me 3. So I can use the command. I can say a tab, tab again. It says, oh, do you want to use A? Great. You want to use B? Because it couldn't possibly be A since I've already specified that. So it gives me a result. Cool, right? Like this is very, very powerful because now you can do anything. You can have a shell that logs in and shows you things and changes the prompts and all that. So this is where it gets interesting, is using Spring Shell and keeping track of state visually, right? This is you've already got the hard stuff. You've already got tab completion. You've got validation. You can see that it took, I typed in 1 on a console as a strings that went into the console as bytes, and somehow that got turned into ints. There's the Spring conversion service is behind the scenes there. It's doing the right thing to allow me to take, you know, parameters and do validation and all that stuff. So all that you don't have to worry about. You're already ahead of the game. I dare you to implement that again using C or something, you know. But what I want to do is I want to build something a little more stateful. So let's imagine that I've got like a service. Okay, I'm just going to create a token thing here. Okay, we don't need this anymore. So we'll say @service, and it's just going to be a login service, right? So you can imagine this actually talks to something real. Maybe you do an OAuth dance or a client credentials flow or something. But for now, let's just suppose I've got a Boolean representing my or an atomic reference to a string, which is the current logged in user, right? So logged in equals new atomic reference. Okay, and I just want to be able to manage that. So void login string username string password. And obviously, I'm not going to do anything real here. I'll just say this.loggedin.set is that, right? I'm going to override that. Good. So now I'm logged in. What about logging out? Okay, logging out is this logged in set null. Good. So now we've cleared the session, so to speak. And I'm going to ask, am I logged in? Okay, is logged in. Turn this.loggedin.get does not equal null, right? As trivial as it is. And then what else do I need? String logged in user. Okay, so obviously this is not real security code. This is just a toy. Don't use it. Okay, logged in, and if it's logged in, then this.logged in dot get. Otherwise, no, right? So or is logged in. There you go. Is logged in. Okay, so there's my my very basic login service, about which we will never speak again. And I'm going to use that to, I need to log in. So the first thing you should do is you should be confronted by just how not logged in you are when you start writing your application, right? When you start using the shell. So I'm going to create a shell component here, shell component. And remember, again, this is just a stereotype annotation, right? So login commands, that's usually what we call these things. This in turn is annotated with a component. So it's just a regular Spring Bean. It has nothing. It has the specialized annotation is great for Spring Shell to, like just like REST controller and add controller and add service act as selectors, so that the component model knows what to do for particular components for Spring Shell. But basically, they're just add component, annotated beans. And I want to use my, let me see, records. I want to use the login service here. Okay, so I've got now a thing that's going to work with the login service. Let's see. The first thing I want is login, and let's see, public void login, and we want to take a username and password, right? So username string password, and I suppose we can just use this.login service.login username password. Okay, there we go. There's our basic login shell. What about the about this one? Well, I want to have a logout method, right? So logout, and this will be public void logout. And again, we're just delegating to our service, so logout. And finally, let's just see if that works now. I'm going to go back to here, exit. Okay, rerun. Check the StreamYard. I know, I would never disable the banner. I know, it's so crazy. My fault. You can have the banner, but you start with blank slate and then bring it back in, right? I'm with you on this. Yeah. The banner is important. It's just not right now. You want to customize it. This is one of those places where people are going to see this, so you have to put your best foot forward. Obviously, the best banner, Nyan Cat Spring Boot banner. Oh, come on. There you go. This one. This is the Nyan Cat Spring Boot banner, right? You should use that. Actually, there's a small bug right now where you cannot override the default Spring Boot banner for Spring Native, but it's already been fixed. It's in trunk. It's just not yet released. Thank goodness. So, but if you do want to do that, eventually, this is the banner you're going to want, the Nyan Cat Spring Boot banner, right? Like if I put it, I'll put it into the application right now. Let's see if I can just clone this. Well, maybe I could just use raw. I don't want to fork it. I just want to copy and paste it. So source main resources, new file banner.txt, right? Put that in there. Let's just see if let's see what it does when you run it locally, right? So this won't. I don't think this will work in native. That's the only bummer. Oh, I disabled the banner, didn't I? So banner. Okay. There you go. So that's much better, right? You've got an appropriate banner for your application. It says meow, which is what it should say. And my favorite part, of course, as always, is this guy right here. Anyway, I don't know if that'll work. We'll see later, actually. For now, I'll leave it there, and just know it might fail, but it might also work. Who knows? I don't know if it's been fixed or not in this release. Hopefully it has. It's critical for the world. Okay, so where were we? We've got my application, log in, log out. I've got my two methods. If I run this, java-jar, target shell, right? Okay, log in, great. Username, great. JLong, password, PW, sure, right? I'm logged in. It has done nothing. We don't know. We didn't know that I needed to log in, and we didn't know, and we don't know now that I am logged in, right? There's no context. There's nothing was there that said, hey, this is your next natural step, right? So what we want are some prompts that kind of feed back to what we're trying to do. They indicate where we should go, right? Otherwise, they're just kind of like, I'm in the forest. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. Somebody help, you know? And I don't have a help command either, which is another thing you should definitely remember to add if you're awesome, which I'm not. So the first thing I can do is first of all, I don't want the logout method to be available to somebody who's not logged in. You can't log out if you're not logged in. It makes no sense. So I wanted to complain, right? If you try to use that. So you can create availability. So public availability, log out availability. Okay, and I'm going to say return this login service dot is logged in. Availability dot available. Otherwise, availability dot unavailable. Couldn't get easier. You should log in first. Okay, and you can leave it like that by convention. The name of the method matches this command. That method, I could do that, or I can do shell method availability and point it to the method. If I want to, for whatever reason, make sure that lines up with this and they're not the same name, they don't match the convention, you can be very explicit about it. Okay, so let's see what that buys us just out of the box. Exit. Okay. Goody. Let's see. Okay, so now log in. No, we want to test log out. Watch. So if I do log out, command log out exists, but it's not currently available because you should log in first. Okay, so details of the error have been omitted. I can use a stack trace to see the bloody truth. Oh, command log out exists. Blah blah blah. Okay. Okay. So you've got that. You've got availability, but I still have this sense of I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I can't do now. I can't log out because I'm not logged in, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. There's nothing that's telling me anything. And so this gets to the business of prompts, right? You want a prompt provider, not a provider that's on time, but a provider that provides the prompt in the shell on the left, before the angle bracket thing. Okay. So we're going to say record login prompt provider, and we're going to use the login service one more time. Okay. And this is just a regular Spring bean. It's just a bean that Spring needs to find for us. And going to be a prompt provider. So implement prompt provider. Ta-da! Get prompt. And my job here is to return the prompt. So I'm going to say, what am I going to do? I'm going to say var logged in equals login service dot is logged in. Okay. And so I'll say logged in. If so, new attributed. Well, let's just copy and paste this because it is easy to get wrong. It's not one of those things that just rolls right off the tongue for me, at least. Copying and pasting. Hello. Okay, so what did that give us? That's a new attributed string. And if we're logged in, then the prompt will be the user. And then this, beak, this bird face, whatever. I'm not sure what that is actually. It's just it's a parody of what I imagine a prompt looks like. Okay. And then the foreground will be yellow. I want that to be yellow. Okay. Because you're logged in. Or maybe it should be green. It'd be like an actual proper, hacker terminal or whatever from the movies. And then if you're not logged in, it should say unknown and let it be in glaring, jarring red. Right. So we have that. And that's it. There's my shell. So let's rerun this now. Oops, what have I done? That was a terrible idea. CD. Oh no, it's fine. Shell. Come on. Shell. Maven p native. No, sorry. Maven d skip tests. Clean package. Okay. Spencer, what's up, buddy? Java minus jar target shell. Okay, there we go. So it says unknown. So like something's wrong. I could have said, hey, you need to log in. I could do whatever I want, but clearly something's up. I got to do something. So log in, right? Username is JLong and password is PW. Okay, log in and there it says JLong. So there's my shell. It's now very clear. I'm in a state that the system is happy with, maybe. So that's, there's a lot more you could do. You can actually render tables using this. You can do, menus. You can do all sorts of very interesting things, all from within Spring Shell. I won't get into the details of it because I've already done that before. There's a Spring Tips video you can watch, which holds up pretty well. It's almost exactly the same as this, except that I don't have the benefit of records, which make my life so much better. Thank you, Java, for that. But what I really want to show you is that you can now turn this into a native image, which is money. So let's try it out. Let's try the banner, okay? If it doesn't work, I'm gonna get rid of the banner because I don't want the Spring Boot banner up in my CLI business. I want the Nyan Cat. That's what I'm here for. I'm Team Nyan Cat. That's okay. But it might have already been fixed. I know that this caused quite this bug where your native applications couldn't replace the banner. They had a banner, but they couldn't replace it. It caused quite a stir in the Spring community. It was kind of a scandal. I'm not speaking, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but when I say it was possibly one of the worst things that's ever happened to nobody, it's not one of the worst things, but it's bad, right? We need better ASCII. Okay, so I want to build this, and if I want to build it, I might need some hints. So there's a hints class. If I'm honest, I haven't really tried this. I haven't tried using Spring Native without this hints class, and I just took this hints class all but unchanged from Yanni, who's one of the awesome engineers on the Spring team, works on Spring Cloud data flow, and he's taken over in the long line of succession of amazing people who have contributed to it to make Spring Shell better. He's one of the people that's kind of working on it of late. But it includes people like Eric Botard, who's still, of course, amazing, and he works on the Spring Cloud data flow stuff. It includes the good Dr. Pollock. I mean, just a lot of amazing people that have worked on this. Ben Alex. My goodness, I couldn't. Oh, that was not great, people. Let's just take a moment to remember the time I almost forgot Ben Alex's name. Oh, life. Yeah, no, that's not good. Ben Alex was the founder of Spring Security, one of the most amazing projects out there. So I shall never forget his name. Okay, so shell native configuration, and just paste. Okay, so basically, yeah, this is Yanni Valchialeati. I'm sorry if I butchered that, my friend. He tells me that most of this stuff in this hints class is for Windows. I haven't tried it in Windows, so I don't even know. But maybe it has some. Maybe some of it. He didn't say all of it though. That's the thing that's a little worrying. Is I get the feeling some of this might be used on the Unixes, Unixi, I don't know, whatever. It'll be used on some of those as well. So just out of an abundance of caution, I've included them because it would be nice if this worked on Windows. Maybe I could try it out. And that's, I think, the bit with JNA, right? JNA is, if you've ever used JNI, then you know that's not a good idea. JNI is a way for Java programmers to link to native code. You can define native methods that, when invoked, end up doing a dispatch across the memory boundary to native, C code or C++ code, and it's painful. And it's partly painful because you have to line up the headers of the C++ code with the methods in the Java classes in your Java code. Whereas a lot of other languages that you just do, like virtual dispatch, you can just call C code. It's a lot slower because it does it all at runtime. But it does work for a lot of sort of use cases. So JNA kind of brings that to the Java ecosystem, or at least that was the goal. And a lot of languages like Ruby and others that have to emulate native features, they use JNA quite successfully. Obviously, I will be interested to see where Project Panama takes all that, because Panama purports to do a lot of the same things, and it reifies some of the core concepts like pointers and things like that in Java itself. So I don't know. I mean, right now, for a language that so hates native code like Java hates native stuff. It's just, it doesn't want you using Win32. It doesn't want you using native stuff in the kernel, and that's, I suppose, for a good reason, right? You want that write once, run anywhere sort of mantra. And it is true, by the by, that if you write your code today in Java, you could probably do a lot of things without ever using native code beyond the stuff that's in the JDK proper, right? So to that extent, I suppose it's succeeded. But nonetheless, for a language that is so hostile to like shelling out or to working with native APIs, we have 3 different interesting choices for working with native APIs. Anyway, let's see where that goes. Anyway, this is here. I need to register this just in case. It's a Spring native application. So for those of you who haven't tried this stuff out yet, well, shame on you. First of all, it's awesome. And second of all, Spring Native is an approach to generating the configuration that gets fed into the GraalVM native image compiler. That compiler is a ahead of time optimizing compiler. So what it does is it looks at all your code and it tries to determine what is reachable. It looks for all the stuff that it can determine by virtue of following it. Basically, it looks for all the things that it can determine your code is using directly. So if your code calls a method on an object in a library, in a .jar in the class path, and then that code calls another method in another library, we can say that those 2 different objects beyond your code are reachable, because there's a direct link between what I invoke in my code and the other libraries that get invoked as a result of that, right? So those types are reachable, but of course that forecloses on all the cool stuff that Java does at runtime, right? All the stuff that Java does that a deterministic compiler just can't see, right? Because remember, runtime it's runtime. It's Turing complete. You can do all sorts of things that would elude or evade detection there, right? So I've talked about this before, but it's possible in Java to, at runtime, after the Java application has started, to take a Java lang string that has the source code for a class file, compile that class file into a .class file, write it to the file system, then load it into the class loader, use that to reflectively instantiate an object, invoke methods on the object. You could create a proxy using JDK invocation handler API and proxy that object. You could make it implement serializable and then write its bytes to disk. And you can do all that after the application has started, right? Long after the compiler, be it the Java compiler or the native GraalVM image compiler, is involved. And it would not know or see those types. And so when you try to compile that using GraalVM, it would fail, right? Because all those types would be erased or wiped out from the native heap. They wouldn't be included because they're not reachable. The compiler has no idea that those types are used. This is bad because so much of Java is this dynamic behavior. So what we need is some way to tell the GraalVM native image compiler, hey, that's mine, don't throw it away. I'm going to need that later. I don't need it right now. You can't see it, but just trust me, it's going to be useful later. And so Spring Native helps with that. It provides all the configuration so that Spring itself can do its thing, right? And it also does a lot to remove some of the dynamic behaviors that so offend the GraalVM native image compiler. Things like reflection. Spring Native actually transpiles your Java code, your Java configuration into so-called functional configuration, where Spring is no longer required to scan at configuration classes and reflectively invoke methods, because they're all they're programmatically registered in the context. It's all reachable, right? So a lot of that is built into Spring Native, but it is a thing that lives and dies all before your application has ever started, right? All before it's ever compiled. Spring Native's entire life is just in the stuff that it does to prepare your code for the GraalVM compilation process, dramatic though it can be. So we've got Spring Native here. I've got the Spring Native hints that are going to be registered on our behalf for us and probably not used, because I can see some of this is like Win32, kernel 32 stuff. So this is just sort of like, oh, if it's there, use these hints. Okay, so we've got that all set up. I'm going to go to a machine here. Let's see, cd drive live, cd shell. Okay, Maven skip tests -p native. That's activating the Maven profile for Spring Native. Clean package. This will take a minute. This is where I would normally fast forward in my YouTube videos. I have a little animation that signals now is a good time to go take a potty break or make a cup of coffee or pot of coffee or drink a pot of, I mean, don't drink a pot of coffee, but you probably could given how long this is. You know, it just takes forever. This is going to be typically without anybody watching, without anybody streaming my desktop and thus taxing my CPU and all that. Oh wait, actually I'm on a different machine. So actually this shouldn't be affected by my screen casting actually. So yeah, typically it takes about 90 seconds to, or a minute to 90 seconds for Spring Native to do its thing. If you run the tests, if you compile the tests into a native image, then of course that doubles everything because it'll compile the tests. Oh, look at that, 1 minute on the dot, 1 minute and 5 seconds. Not bad at all. So target, here's the moment of truth. Will our banner work? Oh, that's so good. Did you see that? Our banner works. That's dynamite. That's awesome. Okay, so log in, username, JLong, password, PW. There you go, huh? And of course I can do log out. And let me try logging out again. You can see the prompt changed as it should, but now if I try logging out again, it says it doesn't work because it's not available, right? So there's my ever so trivial Spring Shell application working just fine in a native context, du-hs shell, right? 53 megabytes, not bad, right? That's that application. And obviously I disabled the log output, but the application starts up like most Spring Boot applications in like 20 or 30 milliseconds, right? Which is way faster than you'll ever perceive, right? It's more than fast. And it takes, let me see, shell, let's run it and go back to that same machine again, pgrep, probably named it, okay, there it is. So, env bin rss by pid, taking 39 megs of RAM, right? So I can now build and distribute this macOS binary for Macintosh users. Well, and obviously I'm running it on Intel, right? I'm not compiling on my M1. I'm compiling on an Intel device. Hopefully GraalVM will have M1 support soon. Sure hope anyway. But anyway, that's a macOS binary. I'm sure it would work just fine on macOS on the M1 because of Rosetta. It would be a little bit slower, but still we're talking, even if it's double, even if it takes twice as long, it's still faster than you can blink or perceive anything. So good stuff. Okay, so I've got this macOS binary. The trouble is macOS, as far as I know, isn't the only operating system out there, right? So what happened was we have a Spring Shell native, okay? Did you see that GraalVM, the official GraalVM project, released a GitHub Action for GraalVM? And then, so GitHub Actions is a continuous integration platform, right? And it's great. I love GitHub Actions. I'm a GitHub Action developer advocate. I mean, I am a big fan. That has saved me unimaginable hours. I mean, just, oh my goodness. Yeah. So thank you, GitHub Action. Thank you, CI. I mean, just everything, all things CI, I'm a big fan, but GitHub Actions has just been like, it offers more solutions than it offers problems, which is, great. So I've got basically the same code as we just looked at. In fact, it's almost exactly the same code. So let me see, shell application. That's this code right here. You can see login service, login commands, login prompt provider, basically the same thing. Yeah. I've got this application, but I've also configured this one to have a GitHub action. And this GitHub action, let's see if we can make this work. It says when there's a git push or a pull request, then run these jobs. And I've got one job called build, and the build, then the name of the build, I'm using a matrix, right? And so in GitHub Actions, if you want to run things against multiple versions of dependencies or on multiple JVMs or against multiple GraalVM compilers or whatever, if you want to run the same code against multiple things, matrices are great because they allow you to parameterize your build. They allow you to swap out different dimensions of your build. So you can run the same, like if you're using Ruby and you want to test it against older versions of Ruby and the current version, or ditto Python, you want to test against Python 2 and Python 3x, or Java. If you want to test against Java 8 and onward, you want to make sure that the stuff that's supposed to only work in Java 17 works, but the stuff that should also work in Java 8 still works. You can set up a matrix build, and basically the key here is the operating system. And I've got a strategy in my matrix. The dimensions of my matrix are the version of GraalVM and the operating system, right? So here I've got a matrix build for Ubuntu and for macOS. So I'm going to run the same job. This will automatically run the same job and all the steps, but with each of these different base operating systems. And I suppose there's probably a Windows. Yeah, there's a Windows latest as well. That's a whole other Oprah. I haven't even gotten into it yet. I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm sure it'll be fine. I have no idea. But basically, the steps are git clone the code, and then use the new GitHub action from GraalVM, from the official GraalVM project, that sets up the GraalVM native image compiler for Java 17 with this version, and make sure that that component is on the class path. And it uses this GitHub token if you want to avoid rate limiting issues. Okay. Then it runs the build shell project, which I'm actually telling it not to use Windows. I'm saying this is an example. Obviously here, this would work on Windows, I imagine, as well as all the Unixes. But you can use this incantation to say, hey, do the following on, invoke all this on Unixes. And then if you're running on Windows, do the same thing, but add a lot of .exes and .bats or whatever. I don't know. And then finally, I'm uploading the binary from each build, and I'm giving it a unique key. So it's shell, operating system, version, and then so on. So I'm taking the artifact from the output directory of the previous step, and it's uploading it to the GitHub artifacts for this build. Okay, so pretty cool, right? That solves a whole bunch of problems. So now I can distribute. I can actually compile the code on any. I can git commit, git push the code on any platform, and then wait 10 minutes, and then out comes binaries I can distribute to any platform I want. I get cross compilation with GraalVM. This is not quite as cool as the lightning fast cross compilation you get with Go on the platform on which you're working. So I can cross compile to Linux or Windows from Mac, for example, but it's pretty good. This is not bad. I'm really impressed that this is like a workable thing and it's so easy to do. So I've already done that, as you can imagine. I'm not going to set that all up again. I'm certainly not going to sit here and make you watch the build run. You can see I got a cross build 9 hours ago. It took 8 minutes, right? 7 minutes and 46 seconds. But basically, there's 2 artifacts that it created. So each one took 7 minutes, right? Because it's got to set up GraalVM, it's got to set up the JDK, it's got to do the actual compilation and all that, and then upload everything. macOS, we already saw that one. That one clearly works. But what about Ubuntu, right? So there's my Ubuntu build shell, whatever. Where's my artifacts? You go to the summary. I found this kind of hard to find. You have to go to, for me at least, maybe there's a better way. I go to the summary, and then you scroll down here, and you can download oh, look at that. They're different. They're about the same, but there's a little bit of difference between each operating system. I wonder why that is. What's being linked into the Ubuntu binary that isn't in the macOS binary? Is there some sort of compression that's happening in the macOS one? I don't know, whatever. So here's the Ubuntu distribution. I'm going to take that. Okay, it's downloading. And what I want to do is I want to run this in my in an Ubuntu distribution, don't I? So I need to actually spin up let's see, open this up. Shell Ubuntu. Okay. And go to the terminal. Okay, actually, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say docker run -it ubuntu bash. Okay, that's my container ID. So I'll go back to that distribution and scp that one. to jlong at mbp 2019.local desktop shell Ubuntu. Okay, wait for it to go across the network to my other machine. I'm logged into that machine here, so desktop, and I don't know which one is which. I gotta redo that again. Okay, so scp jlong at mbp 2019.local desktop. Okay, goody. Okay, there it is. So now I want to use that within my Docker image. That Docker image, that's the container. So I'm going to say Docker cp shell. What is that? No. Docker cp shell Ubuntu, I hope. And then it'll be that /. Okay. So now, should have a shell somewhere. Where did I? Oh, get out of that. Goodbye. Goodbye. Okay. So I'm in the shell. This is the Docker image for the Ubuntu. There's the shell Ubuntu. Oh, it's not executable. Okay, shell Ubuntu. Ta-da! So now log in. Oh, but look at that. There's no banner. That's not great. That's not good. I wonder what that is. Okay. Well, is that the right one? Am I in the wrong shell? All right. Yeah, it's that one. Okay. So for some reason the banner's not there. That makes me very sad. Oh, that sucks. Okay, well, whatever. Did I disable the banner? What happened there? No, it should be there. Something's weird. Okay, whatever. So login, tab, get username or password. Long. Okay, good. Whatever. Log out makes sense. Log out again. Fails. Good. So everything's working in a native context on Ubuntu and on Mac. You saw it on the Mac before. There is a discrepancy there between the banner, so you might just, for now, to ensure continuity across your different binaries, you might want to disable the banner or something like that. I hate to have to even suggest it, but it's a thing you could do if you were sufficiently inebriated or something. Anyway, that's Spring Shell, my friends. What do you think of that? Isn't that cool? Like that Spring native bit. That's the interesting thing. Spring Shell is, amazing. But it's a whole new game, right? I can't think of an easier way to build as sophisticated a CLI as Spring Shell now, and it's really ideal. I mean, you could build. You have access to all of Spring. So if you want to do like Spring Security and do OAuth connections to web services, have at it. You've got a perfectly workable Spring Security implementation that'll work there. If you want to do batch processing, you want to do, like, imagine you built a CLI application to manage generating reports or something. Well, you've got Spring Batch. You can run Spring Batch in a native context, right? You can do anything, right? You can do anything that Spring can do now from the CLI. You could build applications that do all sorts of things and without ever having to go to the cloud. But of course, if you do want to go to the cloud, again, you can do that very easily because it's Spring. You can use the web client. You can use the RSocket requester. You can use Spring integration and start sending messages to web services or whatever. I don't know. I mean, just the possibilities are endless now. You could use MQTT. You could do edge services, right? You could do clients that run on people's terminals, but they in turn talk to IoT devices. You could actually have a thing that you run on your computer that orchestrates things in your home. I don't know. I mean, just the possibilities are, all but endless. So I hope you got something out of that. Let me see if there's any questions, comments, feedback, whatever. That's a bit of a bummer. No questions, just the usual disgust and disappointment. So typical of my streams. Well, yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Are there any, we've got like 9 minutes. So I have nowhere to be in particular. Any other questions? Any comments, feedback, whatever? If not, we can always call it a day or a night or whatever, wherever you are. But yeah, that was Like I got my next thing is to try and get Windows working, which is I know it can be done. Yanni apparently has got it working, so he's gotten it working. I just don't know. I haven't used Windows on purpose in so long that I don't even know how to fake it at this point. I don't even know what I'm supposed to. I know there's backslash versus forward slash. Oh, which reminds me, I saw a. Do any of you all listen to? No, not listen. Do any of you all subscribe to reddit.com/r/dad jokes? Oh, they're so good. They're so bad that they wrap around to great. Question is Josh going to be present at Spring I/O this year? I sure hope so. Yeah, I really hope so. Let's see if maybe they'll accept my talk. I don't know. I would hope so. Yeah, Spring I/O. That's in Barcelona. If you're gonna go to a conference this year, my friends, then let it be Spring 1 in December here in San Francisco. But if you have 2 conferences you want to go to, then let it be Spring 1 and Spring I/O in Barcelona, Spain. I can't think of 2 more diametrically opposed experiences, in terms of time and weather. Obviously, Spring 1 takes place in the chilly December month of San Francisco, which is, that's a thing you can do. It's probably not. San Francisco is beautiful, so you got that. Although by that point in the year, the days will be short and cold. I live in San Francisco. I don't love December, but I do love the idea that we're gonna have Spring 1 here. So that's one thing you can do. And then Spring I/O in Barcelona, Spain, in May, right before the summer. Oh yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough sell. Yeah, I think I've convinced myself. I think I want to do it. Yeah, I want to be there. I don't know if they're gonna let me. Who knows if they'll accept my talk? But if they do, then yeah, that's a thing I can imagine getting on a plane for. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I Windows. Maybe by the time I get to Spring I/O, I'll have sorted out this Windows business. I just got to get myself a virtual machine. One thing I noticed that didn't work is if I tried to run the Docker container on my M1, not my Intel Mac, but my M1 Mac. If I tried to run the Ubuntu container on that and then load the CLI, into that container and try and run it, it doesn't work. It complains about trying to link to an LD, right? A dilib. A static library for x86, which I don't know. It doesn't work. So I had to run Docker on my Intel Mac. This is one of those things where, like I said, I would love for both GitHub Actions to support ARM and for GraalVM to officially support M1 ARM as well, right? Because that's increasingly going to be the ball game there. But for those people who are running on the M1 or whatever, and who don't have access to a native image, you could, like I said, you could probably use the Mac Intel version. That probably works. What didn't work was running the Linux version on Ubuntu on M1, right? But if I ran Ubuntu in Docker on Intel Mac, that worked. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, if for whatever reason you can't run the thing, there's still the jar. You can give them the jar and just say, here, just make sure you've got a JRE and just run Java-jar. Or better yet, just do, you can do Spring Boot executable jars, right? That's the thing I've always told people to do is, if you don't have access to Spring Native, then we have Spring Boot executable jars. You can go here to the configuration. You can say executable is true. And then you go to the command line, even skip tests in package. Okay. Okay, good. So cd target. Now I can just do that, right? That's that. Oh, there's that beautiful ASCII work too. Look at that. That's the way it should be. So that wasn't a native app. I still need the JRE somewhere in my operating system for that to work. But it does. I don't even have to do Java-jar, right? Yeah. This is the nice thing about Spring Shell and the JVM is you have options. You can distribute native binaries that work great for everybody, hopefully. And if it doesn't, for whatever reason, if you're the one holdout running on, Solaris or whatever, I don't know. Next Step. I don't know if is there a Java for Next Step? Who knows? But if you're on some operating system that's not yet in the sort of big three, then you still have Java. There's probably a way to run Java on that operating system. So I really hope people will use this. Can you imagine if they rewrote like the Amazon or Microsoft Azure CLI or something big that does lots of cool things with this? Imagine how much time, if you're a development team and you want to like manage deployments and all that. I keep thinking about, have you ever looked at JReleaser? JReleaser is a really nice project by Andres Almire, which helps with releasing artifacts, right, with the build pipeline for that. I would love to like be able to orchestrate some of that. You have a command line utility. There's already a command line of sorts, but I think of that kind of stuff. Okay, a question is, just came here like 5 minutes ago. I just want to thank you for the great content on here and on YouTube. I always find it interesting. Are those Twitch streams? So the Twitch streams, I think we could do a better job of announcing. If I'm honest with you, I don't know when I'm doing it's not in my head. It's not something I do so often. I do it like once a month, these Twitch streams, but I do a YouTube channel update. I do a new video every week without fail, right? So that's on YouTube, and that's just announced when it's announced. I don't love having to, like, I used to do live talks. I do a lot of live talks now, but they're all virtual, and I'm great. I'm happy rather when I'm on stage and I have to use Spring. It's just me and the audience and some hope, because Spring never lets me down. So it's not like that's a problem, but nonetheless, if I can avoid having to be somewhere on a schedule, if I can just release it when I'm ready, when it's ready, then I much prefer that, so these Twitch streams, there's a lot of good stuff, not my stuff certainly, but the other videos, the other channels, the other content on this channel is awesome. So VMware, I think it's tanzu.tv, twitch.tv/VMware Tanzu. So if you go to that on Twitch and just subscribe, it should say, hey, we're going live. And I think you can expect something on Wednesday most weeks. If it's not me, then it's probably somebody good, and you can find those. So I don't know about YouTube. I don't know how that works, but I think this is one of the first times I've ever streamed to YouTube as well. So hope that works for you. Okay, my friends. Well, it's been fun. I check out this project, Spring Tips, Spring Shell Native. You can find the code for the matrix build. It's open, right? It's not a private repository, so it's right there. GitHub workflows, cross build. And by the way, this GitHub Actions thing, for reasons I'll never quite understand, is free. Like, you can just run it and it'll just solve this incredibly hard problem for you for free. So between GraalVM, which is free and open source, and between the Java, between the JRE and the JDK and Spring, and now this, I just, you're just paying with your time, and Spring makes that, it makes this expense you spend in terms of your time as little as possible. So hope that works for y'all. Hope you got something. I'll see y'all next time. And as always, find me on Twitter at StarbucksMan. You can find me on bit.ly/spring-tips-playlist. And thanks for joining.